Alexander the Great came to visit a man living in a clay jar. Not as a joke, not as a curiosity. The most powerful conqueror the world had ever seen, ruler of Greece, Persia, Egypt, a man whose armies had redrawn the map of civilization, made a personal visit to a philosopher who owned a cloak, a staff, and nothing else. He stood over him and asked, "Is there anything I can do for you? Anything at all? Name it." Diogenes looked up and said, "Yes, stand out of my sunlight." Alexander left in silence, and later told his generals, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." Think about what that means. The man who had conquered the known world looked at a man who had nothing, no home, no wealth, no status, no power, and envied him. This is the story of Diogenes of Sinope, the most fearless, most shameless, most genuinely free human being in the history of ancient philosophy. He lived in a jar. He owned nothing. He feared no one, and he might be the only philosopher who actually lived exactly what he preached. Diogenes was born around 412 BC in Sinope, a Greek colony on the Black Sea coast in what is now northern Turkey. His father was a money changer, a man whose entire life revolved around the value of coins, the weight of silver, the careful accounting of what things were worth. And then, depending on which account you read, either Diogenes or his father was caught debasing the currency, shaving the edges of coins, mixing cheaper metals into silver, the ancient equivalent of counterfeiting. They were caught. They were exiled. Diogenes lost everything. He came to Athens with nothing, and somewhere in that loss, in the humiliation of exile, in the stripping away of everything he had been, he found something. A question. If I have lost everything society said I needed, and I am still here, what do I actually need? He found his way to Antisthenes, a student of Socrates, the man who had begun asking whether virtue could exist without wealth, without status, without any of the things the world insisted were necessary. Diogenes didn't just listen to those ideas. He took them further than anyone had dared. He found a large clay storage jar in the Agora of Athens, and he moved into it. Not as a stunt, not as performance, as philosophy made physical. He owned a cloak, one cloak, a staff, a small bag for food. He reportedly threw away his cup the day he saw a child drinking water from cupped hands. If a child needs nothing more than their hands, what do I need a cup for? He begged for food. He slept wherever he found himself. He bathed in cold water. He walked barefoot through snow. Not because he enjoyed suffering, because every unnecessary thing he removed was one less chain, and Diogenes wanted to be completely free. So what did Diogenes actually believe? At the center of his philosophy was one idea that sounds simple and is almost impossible to actually live. Freedom is not something you find. It is something you build by systematically removing everything that controls you. Most people, Diogenes observed, were not controlled by force. They were controlled by desire. The desire for wealth, so they worked jobs they hated. The desire for reputation, so they said things they didn't mean. The desire for comfort, so they never took a risk. The desire for status, so they spent their lives performing for people whose opinions didn't matter. Every desire you cannot control is a chain around your ankle. The man who needs a palace to feel secure is less free than the man who sleeps under the stars. The man who needs approval to feel worthy is a slave to every person whose opinion he craves. Diogenes called this living according to nature. Strip away what society invented. Strip away the artificial needs, the invented hierarchies, the status games, and reputation management. What is left? A human being with a body that needs food, water, and warmth, and a mind capable of reason and virtue. That is all you actually are, and that is enough. He walked through Athens in broad daylight carrying a lamp. When people asked what he was doing, he said, "I am looking for an honest man." He never found one. When Plato defined man as a featherless biped, a carefully reasoned philosophical definition. Diogenes showed up to his lecture, holding a plucked chicken. He placed it in front of Plato and said, "Here is Plato's man." He was not being cruel. He was doing what he always did, exposing the gap between how things are described and how they actually are. He called himself a citizen of the world, cosmopolites, the first recorded use of that word in human history. Not Athenian, not Greek, not bound by any city's walls, a citizen of the cosmos. And when pirates captured him and sold him into slavery, when a man asked what he could do, Diogenes replied, "Govern men." He was bought by a Corinthian named Xeniades to tutor his children, and Xeniades later said that having Diogenes in his house was like having a god under his roof. The man who owned nothing turned out to be worth everything. Here is the question Diogenes is asking you. Not the dramatic version, not "can you live in a jar," but the real one. What are you carrying that you don't need? Not physically, mentally, emotionally, socially. How many of your daily decisions are made, not because they're right, but because of what someone else will think? How much of your anxiety comes from protecting things that don't actually make you free? They just make you look free. The house, the status, the carefully curated version of yourself that you present to a world that is too busy protecting its own version to actually notice yours. Diogenes is not saying give it all away. He is saying know the difference between what you need and what you've been convinced you need, because most of what controls you entered your life quietly. It didn't announce itself as a chain. It came as comfort, as security, as reputation. And then one day you realized you couldn't make a single decision without consulting it first. The Stoics, who came after Diogenes, Zeno, Cleanthes, Chrysippus, they built their entire philosophy on the foundation he laid. The idea that external things have no real power over you. That virtue is the only good, that a man who has lost everything and still has his character has lost nothing that matters. Diogenes didn't just teach that idea, he proved it. Every single day, in a jar, in the Agora of Athens, in front of everyone, his entire life was the argument. So ask yourself, honestly, what is the one thing in your life that, if you lost it, would make you feel like you had lost yourself? That thing is your chain. Not because having it is wrong, but because needing it, being unable to imagine yourself without it. That is where your freedom ends. Diogenes lost everything and discovered he needed almost nothing. That is not tragedy. That is the most radical liberation in the history of philosophy. He died around 323 BC, the same year as Alexander the Great. Two men who represented everything opposite about what a human life could be. One had conquered the world. The other had conquered himself. One left behind an empire that collapsed within a generation. The other left behind an idea that is still alive right now, in this video, in whatever you're feeling as you watch it. Diogenes asked to be thrown unburied into a field when he died, so the animals could eat him. When people objected, said it was undignified, he smiled. "Leave me a stick," he said, "so I can drive them off." "But you won't be conscious," they said. "You won't know what's happening." "Then what does it matter?" he replied. Even in death, he refused to let the fear of what others thought have any power over him. That is the Diogenes principle. Freedom is not the absence of difficulty. It is the absence of unnecessary chains. And the work, the real work, is not acquiring more. It is learning, piece by piece, desire by desire, what you can live without. Until what remains is something no one can take from you. If this video found you at the right moment, go to the comments right now and write one thing: I will not break. That is not a message to me. That is a promise to yourself. And tell this family, which philosopher should wear the next mask? Drop the name below. If you're new here, this is what we do. Every week, one philosopher, one story, one lesson sharp enough to cut through everything the world throws at you. Subscribe, turn on notifications. Don't miss what's coming. Until next time, wear the mask.